What up, y'all? Appreciate you showing up, hanging out, listening to my dumb ass. Like and subscribe. So, in the last video, I touched upon the Final Fantasy 16 30 frames per second and stuff. I forgot to really mention or dive into, I might have mentioned it, but now it seems that the game Final Fantasy 16, which is exclusive on the PlayStation 5 and PC, I believe, is making PlayStation 5's melt. Let me be specific. So Zaire, Next Gen 720 or whatever his name is now, he was live streaming. He was playing Final Fantasy 16. And I think it was like a QTE or a cutscene or something. And he's playing it, and then his PlayStation shut off to the screen that says, "You better turn off your PlayStation. It's really too hot, so we just had to stop it because it's too hot." And he flipped out and said it was smoking. He's exaggerating, of course. He's a showman of sorts, so whatever. But the point is, your boy Mark Cerny, he's a smart guy. He's a smart dude. He can solve problems. But he also knows the laws of thermodynamics. He also knows that heat is the enemy. Heat will break down your things. If you have sustained heat for a long period of time, then that's bad for whatever you're talking about. If you're talking about an engine in a car, right? That's why there's coolant. The cooler your engine operates, well, within parameters, the better. I mean, engines are meant to operate at a specific or, a range of temperature. It can't be 0 degrees because it's too cold. Friction needs to happen for all these things to move. But there's an optimal temperature for engines per se, and to get performance out of it. Same thing with PlayStation 5. The only problem is that in an attempt to stay close to the power narrative with the Xbox Series X, they overclocked it in the last minute. That's why there's liquid cooling in PlayStation 5s, which is ridiculous. You don't need liquid cooling in a console. It's the dumbest, it's liquid metal. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. Liquid metal, not liquid cooling. That was probably an option, but it would have been way too expensive to make a liquid-cooled PlayStation 5. It wouldn't, impossible. So they put liquid metal on the CPU and put some freaking sponges around. It was a bad idea to overclock the PlayStation 5 to begin with. And now you're seeing why. How is a PlayStation 5 that is outperforming the Xbox Series X, a more powerful system, in all these games that just happen to be exclusive or happen to be contractually obligated to to be on commercials and such with PlayStation marketing deals? How come those games they all perform way better than Xbox, right? But now you have a Final Fantasy that is exclusive, not on Xbox. What's happening? Why is it at 720p, struggling, can't even make it to 60 frames regularly, and bricking systems? How? It's so apparent that the PlayStation 5 is underpowered, that they're overclocking it and pushing it to its limits, that yes, Sony has to make a PlayStation 5 Pro because they can't do anything else with the PlayStation 5. Look at Final Fantasy 16. It's breaking your PlayStation 5s. They're melting, and people have to call the fire department because they're like, what's the problem? Oh, my PlayStation 5 blew up and now my curtain's on fire. Please help. Send the brigade. Man, it's so obvious. And the thing is like, it's not going to be legitimate. It's not going to be, part of the not vernacular, but part of the history books, if you will, if it's not said in court, right? I'm saying it now, and I know it's to be true. And obviously the proof is in the pudding because you got overheating PlayStation 5s. So, and the fact that it does that thing and it switches off, that's a protection. That's to protect the PlayStation 5 from actually overheating and damaging and breaking and melting and fire. That's what that's for. Because the 360 had the same thing when the red ring, if that happened, they put that in. So when it get to a certain temperature, so when the system got to a certain temperature, it would stop operating. So that was a hardware update that Sony put in for the PlayStation 5 because they knew that it's not good. It's a bad system, you know? And so now I predict PlayStation 5 Pro probably if not 2024 fall, 2025 spring, something like that. Are they gonna disguise it? I mean, they said they're gonna have a smaller, cooler PlayStation. I mean, it'd be cooler because it's smaller chip. So if there isn't a Pro, it's gonna be that one that doesn't overheat, basically. That's the only thing they can do, you know? And so they're gonna keep the clocks the same, and they're gonna have a smaller chip, which requires less cooling. So that's how they're gonna solve the problem, by just putting a smaller chip in it. Instead of 7 nanometer, I think they're going for 6. I believe they're going for 6. And 5, I think, is out now or soon. And I think Xbox, if they do a revision, they'll do a 5. They'll do a 5 nanometer. But they won't change like the power. Anyway, it's a journey. This generation is definitely interesting in all of the different twists and turns. And this court case, I know I'm a little tired. I'm sorry. Apologies for the low energy, but I remember saying that this court case is going to unearth all the goodies, all the behind the scenes stuff, all that stuff. That's what's happening. And today is Tuesday, so we still get tomorrow. And I guess closing arguments is on Thursday or Friday or something like that. I don't know. So, you know, a couple of days and we'll see. I haven't been keeping up on it. People have been getting in trouble for streaming it, so I have to find out where the actual link is for the, I guess, Zoom meeting or whatever it is, so I can actually listen in. But I definitely want to hear the closing arguments. I definitely want to hear that. But I think Bobby Kotick was on the stand today. But anyway, that doesn't matter. That's whatever. We'll find out in a couple of days what's the deal is. But regardless of that, right? Like, say if the deal goes through, fine, they'll do that, blah, blah, blah. Then once that dust settles, then they'll go buy some more studios and, do whatever they need to do. That's Microsoft. They got money. They're going to do that. If the deal doesn't go through, it will only enrage Microsoft's resolve. Their resolve will be, okay, it's time. Sony put a monkey wrench into this. We have to fight fire with fire, And so they're gonna do whatever it takes to stop Sony's behavior, because that's what's happening. I was listening to Dirk Griggity today. Shout out to them. We believe green. It's funny shit. The Dreamcast guy jokes are just that's the new evolution of that show. It's ridiculous. It's hilarious. Anyway, I was listening to Dreamcast guy, and I was listening to Dirk Griggity, and he was saying that Sony is doing what Nintendo did back in the NES versus Sega Master System days. And I said this before. Sony is trying to lock down all the exclusives for the PlayStation. It's exactly what Nintendo did, except Nintendo's licensing agreements with third-party game makers, like a game, a studio, whatever, would come to, whether it's Capcom, Konami, whoever, will go to Nintendo and say, yo, we want to put a game on your Nintendo. And then they're like, all right, here's the contract. And in the contract, it said they couldn't make the game for any other competing systems, i.e. Sega Master System. And that's why, if you look back at Nintendo versus Sega Master System, Nintendo Entertainment System, Nintendo had all the games. They had all the games. Sega had only first-party games. And for arcade games, sure, they made pretty dope arcade games, but for a company who only had primarily first-party games, they had a pretty good library. I was a Sega Master System dude. And that changed when the Genesis came around, obviously, but And the Sega Master System had a handful of, I think Compile made some games, Tengen I think made some, maybe, which is Atari. Also Taito, Double Dragon came, a couple of games, you know, nothing too, just a handful. And that is what Sony's doing now. They're trying to replicate that, and it works, right? But this is a different time, because when the NES came out and the SMS came out, that was just after the crash. That was just after Atari, you know, messed up all their cocaine and hookers and stuff and whatever they were doing. And so Nintendo was right there, perfect place, perfect time. They got the jump on it, and then Sega just never had a chance in North America anyway. It's more popular in Brazil and in UK and stuff. But still, you know, Nintendo took it all because of their business practices. And people don't remember this. People don't realize how devious Nintendo was. Who knows? I don't know what they're doing, but that's what Sony's doing now. And the fact that it's being aired out, their dirty laundry about how they're doing business is being aired out in the court of law, in public, on Twitter, on YouTube. This is not a good look for Sony, obviously. Will it harm them irrevocably? I can't even say the word. Will it harm them ultimately? No. But they need to change how they do business. Their business strategy is flawed and it's old. It's antiquated, and it will not work moving forward. That's why Microsoft changed. They said they lost the console war, but that's not the war that you want to win, because that is a losing battle regardless of who wins, because it's a dying sector, business sector. It's like saying, oh, we lost the VHS war. We lost the VCR war. It's like those things don't exist anymore. Just like Sony's business model won't exist that much anymore, because they're trying to hold on to something, to an idea that was birthed in the 80s, 70s and 80s and 90s, but is not applicable now because of different business models. Meaning Netflix, meaning Disney Plus, meaning Spotify, anything streaming. No, pull that back. It's about subscriptions. Everybody's doing subscriptions. Websites are doing newspaper subscription. That was a good idea. Now it's digital. Everything is They even have subscriptions for cars. Like, you know, you want your special feature in your new electric vehicle, you gotta subscribe. You gotta subscribe to get fast charging. You gotta subscribe to everything's subscription. I mean, Netflix was the obvious, you know, thing to look at for entertainment. But if you look at everything else, everything's subscription. Everything's subscription. Website subscription. You got food subscription services. Get your meals by the mail. It's everything subscription. The fact that Sony is just not doing it for real is a problem. The longer they delay, the worse it's going to be for them. And they're sitting here crying about what Microsoft might do. Meanwhile, they're doing the exact same thing right now and have been for years, I would say decades. And they don't get punished. They don't get investigated. None of this thing. What FTC? What the hell are you doing? Why are you looking at Microsoft, an American company, and not looking at Sony, an enemy, if you will, to the American economy, not to anything else? You know. But you know, it's frustrating how the FTC is handling this whole thing. I hope Lena Khan gets reassigned. I'll say that. Let's be nice. I think this will still go through, the deal. You know, I don't think this injunction is going to happen. So, but regardless if it does or doesn't happen, right? Microsoft still has way more money than Sony. So when Matt Booty said in 2019 in that email, we want to basically outspend Sony out of business, basically, that's what Sony's been doing, except they've been doing it stupidly, because they have been spending this money to keep games off of Xbox, but they're not making any more money than they would usually if they didn't do it. They're actually spending more money to keep it off of Xbox in hopes that more people will buy PlayStations. Now, a part of that is true. A part of that has worked. What is the percentage? I don't think it's big enough for them to be like, oh, you know, this is how we should do it forever. It's dumb because they're being left behind by Game Pass. Game Pass is killing it. But anyway, this is stuff I've talked about before, but I wanted to get a little bit into it a little bit more. You know, and I'm going to try to do some research on what's been going on in the case, and I can talk about that on tomorrow's video. But I appreciate y'all so much. I'm so tired, and I'm gonna sleep later, obviously. Let me know in the comments below about this Final Fantasy melting PlayStation 5's, which is hilarious. And the whole Sony's business model, how it's been, and do you think they need to change their business model in order to stay relevant in video games, in the video game console market? Because Microsoft is changing the game. They have changed the game already. And so if Sony doesn't adapt, like I said this before, they're gonna get left behind. But I appreciate y'all, and I'll see you on the next one. Till the wait.